Yeah, so last year was a very different season than maybe we're expecting this year because it started out dry, got drier,
Yep.
looking a little better this year, but this product isn't necessarily just for dry conditions.
It's not, but we did see success in the drought season, not only with where we were putting down fertilizers in row with the natural starters, adding our products with the Aqueous products with that. But one of the things that we've had a lot of conversations with producers this year during this winter that we've had with the different, we got a blizzard today and maybe 1-2 days from now. Not now, but I mean
right.
in the winter. But having those conversations have been fun to talk to producers about. It's asking the question, is this a normal winter? And well, kind of, yeah. You know, I remember seeing the snow hit and I remember the cold air. So then we bring up the point, well, this could be a normal summer too, where we got some warm weather and some rain to come. So
there are still areas considered in drought.
Yes.
Some not.
Yes.
Can it help dry areas and normal wet areas?
Yes.
Compare for me. How?
Yes, it can. One of the things that we learned about our Kelsene product is that it was designed down in Arizona in the turf industry. Okay, and it was all having to do with the soils and the water issues that were taking place down there, and that's a whole big story. But when we had the privilege of bringing Kelsene up here, this will be the 6th season now in the upper Midwest, and prior to even putting Kelsene out into the fields, because we used to be in the custom harvesting business, we got to meet a lot of folks throughout the whole upper Midwest. We knew people. That gave us the privilege of going out and knocking on doors and asking farmers to do trials. And when we saw Kelsene begin to work, for example, in drier areas, so we've been in real wet areas in the last several years too, but Kelsene was designed to flocculate that soil, to open the grounds up, to allow the waters on top to dry and fall down, I should say, and drip down. In the drought season, because of what it does to the soils this past year, we saw, and it's easy to talk about different results in yields, but we saw averages between 10 and 12 bushels more per acre on corn, for example. And we do travel throughout both Dakotas and Minnesota, and we were out to eastern Montana, down into Nebraska, where we watched farmers using the Kelsene to go down in row with their starter fertilizers, for example. And when it opens up the soils and not only warms up the ground on that top ground, but it's allowing the root process to go down deeper where the moisture was at. We were also taught that, and I use this as a term, that Kelsene was designed to mimic a root exudate. So when it goes down into the soils, it opens that ground up and holds it open.
So, were you just talking about Kelsene now?
Yes, just Kelsene for a second. Yep.
So, staying with Kelsene for a minute then, did I hear you say that maybe it could help a farmer get in a little earlier when you said it warms the soil?
What farmers are doing is they're putting it down now. We've been working with the last 3 to 4 years where farmers are putting it down in row with their starter fertilizers, whether it's beans or corn or whatever. If it's wheat, small grains that are going down, they can go out and do spray applications with the Kelsene on top of the soils through their post or pre-emerge applications combined. But yeah, we've had the opportunity to watch the ground temperatures warm up where they're putting the plants in the ground. The seed germination has been a lot faster. There's 3 or 4 days where we've seen the germination take place quicker as well because it does warm up the ground.
So we sort of have 2 things going on that could really be of benefit, maybe 3 things actually this year, depending on whether your soil has been and your outlook is wet or dry. Mm-hmm. Can help you there.
Yep.
Can help you maybe get in the ground a little earlier,
right,
which benefits in a lot of ways. It
yep.
Increases yield, and then right now, what everybody's talking about is rising costs,
yes.
inputs.
Yep.
How can this help?
Okay, with the rising costs, one of the things that we know about, and we can talk about aqua yield now too, in terms of the nutrients and the fertilizers through liquid nanotechnology. We are working with farmers that are using generic sources of fertilizers, starters or whatever, And we've been able to save them anywhere from 40 to 50% of the input costs on the fertilizers that they're using. Not picking on the fertilizers, but I'm talking about the technology that's in the fertilizers that are coming through AquaYield. It's like a starter fertilizer. You can cut it back 50% and throw in our starter fertilizers alongside that. And not only do we know that it's an input cost savings, we know that the technology is helping the results coming back when farmers are getting their yields.
So without getting too technical,
Yes.
how does that technology save a farmer money on fertilizer?
Well,
Yep,
Sorry, can we start that question again?
sure.
Thank you.
Did I knock into my mic?
Yep.
So without getting too in the weeds, so to speak, on the technology, how does the AquaYield technology help a grower save money on fertilizer?
It all has to do with the size of the fertilizer that you're putting down into the soils or spraying onto the plants on a foliar application. The nanotechnology is something that isn't extremely brand new. It's been around for many, many years. If you take a thought process and go back to the size of the computers that we used to have, and now we can hold it in our phone, that's a portion of nanotechnology in itself. But when you talk about like our fertilizers, whether it's our micronutrients or our nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, our zinc or our iron that we're using through this liquid technology of nanotechnology, farmers are being able to utilize and understand that a 2.5 gallon container is going down at a rate of 4 ounces per acre. So a 2.5 gallon container is covering 80 acres of planting. Or spraying, whatever they're doing.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. It is.
So what else do you want, what other points do you want to be sure and make about, let's just stick to AquaYield for now.
Yeah, we can do that. The other side of through the nanotechnology of liquid fertilizer applications, the privileges that we've watched is that farmers again can cut back on their use on a starter fertilizer like we talked about, saving 50%. We have another product called Nanopro, which farmers are being able to add into their herbicide applications. And so when they're out spraying their first round of weed control or whatever they're out doing, we have a product called Nanopro that you can enter in and cut back your rates of your herbicides, for example, because it ties in and helps carry that herbicide in, or the fertilizers, liquid fertilizers as well, into the plant much more in high technology.
So do you use that with AquaYield?
That is AquaYield, yep.
The Nanopro?
Yep, Nanopro is one of their products.
Different kind of?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, I think some of what you said was about Kelsene, but it probably applies to both
It's a combo, yeah.
products.
Yep.
So is there anything else you want to talk about AquaYield?
Let's see. Did you have any other questions about it, or?
Not really. I mean, I think we hit the most important
Okay.
things.
One thing that we can share too is that we know what the price of fertilizers are today. And the biggest thing that we've been watching with AquaYield, for example, on all the fertilizers, we know that if the average price of what you're going to use in the AquaYield products is anywhere from $12 to $15 per acre, you can compare that to standard fertilizers that would be up in that $50 to $60 per acre. So when you talk about the input costs and talk about, well, how does this work, how does this technology work, it's fun to sit down with the producers and go through the details of what nanotechnology is all about in terms of liquid. When you think of a wiffle ball, an empty wiffle ball, you can fill that with nitrogen, potassium, or phosphorus, and that's how the manufacturing process takes place. It's very, very tiny when it goes in. That's why it can cover a lot of ground. And the other beauty about these products as well is not just the input costs, and on an average of 3 to 1 or more higher levels, is to sit back and participate in not just putting it down in with your starter fertilizers or your side dressings and stuff like that. You can also use these products as a foliar application too. We've had a lot of producers in the last few years that we've seen, like in the corn, levels where there's been K deficiencies in the plants, where we've had farmers come back and we've shown them how we can do trial work, but a lot of farmers don't want to do trials. If they say, if this is going to work, I want to do all of it. And that's not where we enter the gates. We want to do trials. We want to make sure that they see what's going to take place too. The best way to explain the wisdom and the knowledge about what's being watched is from a farmer, because they're watching it. We're there with them, but we've watched where farmers have been able to take advantage of K deficiencies, for example. Again, I'll go back to that on corn, where we've seen the changes take place, where we know side by side where they did do applications and foliar applications in August, when the corn is way beyond going out there with a ground sprayer and they have to come in with aerial crop spraying. But we've had proof of where farmers can see a $15 to $18, or not 18 bushel increase, 15 to 18 bushel increase on putting a foliar application of like a Nano K.
Makes a big difference.
It is.
So 5 years under your belt, wide variety of weather conditions.
Yes.
Is there any one condition where you say this is really ideal for this, or do you find that no matter what the season brings,
Yeah.
the outcomes are more or less the same?
Yeah. Last year with the drought, it was throughout, and in the areas that we were working in. Yeah, there were some areas where it was spotty, where some rains did hit. When we go out to the western part, we did find some areas where it worked. We also work with producers who have center pivot irrigation. And the great thing about these products, like any other product too, but you can add in the nano products in with irrigators, center pivot irrigators too. But in the seasons that we've had with the drought this year, we, like I mentioned to you earlier, we still saw an anywhere from 10 to 12 bushel increase on like our Kelsene product going down, and that's being blended off with some of our starter fertilizers that we're using with AquaYield too.
So one thing we are hearing is that there are some shortages or supply chain issues with some of the products.
Yeah.
Do you want people to get in early, or do you say we don't have any problem because it's
That's a great question.
made here, or you
yeah.
know, what?
One of the biggest things that we were questioning last fall when we started to hear that these weren't rumors, these were things that were going to be taking place in terms of shortages. And of course, AquaYield came right on board with that because of the size that they need of different fertilizers to generate this back down to nanotechnology levels of liquids. The process that they spent was to go out and pick up the products. And and I can put it this way, if it was a 7 or a 10% increase on products, and you're talking about $8 an acre, and you say it's 10%, well, you're talking maybe 80 cents more per gallon, or per acre, I should say, for production. So we did learn a whole lot about where the pricing was going to go. We spent a lot of time with the producers. One of the things that we do through Erickson Custom Operations, we like to set up a lot of small town meetings. We do participate in trade shows. They're fun, but sometimes they get a little boring too, because a lot of producers aren't coming out and visiting us at those places. And it has a lot to do with what's been going on with COVID too. I mean, by getting these back up and going again.
It's the weather.
The weather and that type of thing.
Season
Yeah.
is blizzard season too. So.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of fun in the small town portions of going out and meeting with producers. If it's a half a dozen guys or a dozen guys that come to one of the meetings, it's all about the education and answering questions. So the teaching portion of that is the whole process of what we enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, you really do have to reach people one-on-one to explain what this is and how it works,
Yep.
because it's so
Yep.
new, so different.
Yep.
All right, anything else you want to talk about AquaYield, or should we move on to Kelsene?
We can move on to Kelsene.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would be the number one most important point you'd want to make about Kelsene?
Okay. Kelsene was a product that was, again, it's been around forever. It got, I say forever, it was started maybe close to 20 years ago down in Arizona, and it's continuing to increase. One of the gentlemen that we work with, we used to be a Midwest bio dealer, Midwestern, and one of the employees that used to be there, and he's been on our program with us before, Tom Vanderheiden, was introduced because he used to work for MBA, and he was brought down into Arizona. He was a gentleman that we knew when we brought Kelsene up here back in 2015, and we kind of hesitated on doing some things with it because we were very skeptical about it as well. But when we knew it was working down in the turf industry, we also started to watch it down in the ag industry as well in Arizona before we brought Kelsene up here to do our trial work. Because of our history of being involved in custom harvesting and doing work around the upper Midwest here, it gave us the privilege of knocking on farmers' doors by saying, we've got a product that we can maybe recover some of the soils that you guys are losing. And they were skeptical, and which is good because we were too. But when we had the privilege of going out and doing a 5 or a 10 acre trial with Kelsene and watching the soils come back to life like we were told they would, it's been a privilege again now coming up in the 6th season where a lot of producers are using Kelsene on their whole production. Kelsene was designed, again, like I mentioned, to open up that ground. And in that process of opening up the ground, we're also learning what it's doing to release the natural nutrients that are in the soils. If it's nitrogen, potassium. One of the things that we look a lot at is the salt levels in the soils, whether we're dealing on sodic soils or salinity soils, high waters. We've been watching how Kelsene will work. It's very similar to with what we know about drain tiling down 24 inches. And I used to be involved with a company that was in the drain tile industry while we were still harvesting too. And we learned what Kelsene, now I said this is something that we can maybe watch in that top 6 to 8 inches as it can hold the ground open, allow the salts to drop, and just go on from there, releasing the natural nutrients and getting the crops to come back to life, and getting the soil, first of all, to come back to life, and watching the crops change and take place. Before we went public with you guys back in 2020, one of our producers that we worked with up in the Crookston, Minnesota area, we did a trial on some acreage on one of his half sections, just a 10-acre strip trial that we did, where we watched in 2018, Darcy, my wife, and I went out and pulled in the month of June when it was on wheat. This ground was on wheat that year. And we pulled the soil samples out, and we said, you can apply this fall because the crop was already growing. You can put it on any time. We have producers right now out on frozen ground that are out spraying it because it'll go down on the ground and be there and be ready for them before they go out to plant. But when they put their first application down in the fall of 2018, they were also going out and using an extra source of calcium carbonates, which is the beet lime, going down into the soils to combine up, because we could go back to one of the old interviews that this Tom Bannerheiden did. He called our calcium in the soils the bully. Yeah. And when he talked about that being the bully, that means when Kelsene can open the ground up, the calcium in that soil will help hold that ground open. It isn't going to be tied up. It's not going to be rock hard anymore. It starts to change. When we saw then in 2019, because we pulled the soil samples on an annual basis, we saw the salt levels in that soil drop from 3.92 down to 0.81, which means that was a tremendous direction for the salts to move downward. That next year when they raised beets on that crop, and I shouldn't be telling them anything about the results that they had, but they were able to grow beets out there, which they saw anywhere from 10.5 ton per acre, which they hadn't grown on that ground for close to 20 years.
Had they not been able to grow beets on that land?
No, exactly.
Because of?
Yep, because of the high levels of salts and different things that were taking place in the soils. We look at the base saturation levels of the calcium in the soil. I mean, we could go on and on about everything that we look at, pHs and that type of thing too. But when we see the results taking place, it's when this farmer came to us and he used the S word. He said, "This is not a sale, is it?" And I looked at him and I says, "Well, okay." He said, "This is a story," and he made the privileged offer to us to say, "I'll tell other people about this." And that's the first year then in 2020 that we went public, back in August.
All right, so I think we've done a few stories on this and how it works, so I have the general information about that, and so the main thing is just that how we want to remind people that if you have
Yeah.
some patches in your land that aren't productive because of saline,
Yeah.
this is what you
Yeah.
want to try.
Yep. Yep.
So I always think of you guys, I wonder when there's like a saltwater spill in the oil patch, can it be used out there? Or is it just too much?
No, we actually we're using Kelsene. We've got an organic source of Kelsene too that works a little bit quicker, but we're using that in the oil fields too right now. It's
Good.
helping. It's in addition to, it's a tool. A tool means, I mean, they're putting drain tile down below that ground too to clean the soils up that they're bringing in. But this has been a big part of now what's taking place too.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, anything else you want to talk about Kelsene?
You know, literally, I just want to say thank you to the manufacturers of Kelsene when they were able to introduce us to Kelsene and with what it was going to be doing, what we were going to watch it do, but it wasn't going to be something that we were going to grab onto until we saw it work, but that the producers in their ground were convinced that it was working. The other side of that is that we meet a lot when we go out to do a lot of our small town meetings. When they know we're going to be there and we're going to be speaking about Kelsene, a lot of the farmers who rent their ground out as the owners, the landowner, they'll come and join the renters that are renting their ground, and they say, well, we want our ground to be recovered. We're renting this ground out, and I've seen it happen many times. And one of them I can say in particular, he put his arm around the guy that was sitting in one of our tables, and he said, because I don't want to lose this guy here that's renting our land, we want to keep him. And we want the soil to come back to life, and we're here to help. We're going to participate in the investment.
So are the soils worse around here, or is this product kind of used equally around the country?
The soils are, we're in a tough area. We do live in a tough
And I
area.
don't mean worse, you know what I mean?
But
I
they're,
mean more patches
they
of
vary.
this.
And because that was one of the things why we spread out before we got started here locally, before we went public. We wanted to see what things were like out in eastern Montana to northwestern Minnesota to down into Nebraska to see with what we could watch for the different types of soils and what was going to be required for because we take the soil samples and then we put the recommendations together. For example, if Kelsene goes down the first year on the toughest ground, for example, it's going to be at a rate of 1 gallon per acre. But 9 times out of 10, what we've watched Kelsene do, because we called it a 3 to 5 year reclamation process, it's going to take time to replace this, just like drain tile is a 5 to 7 year process in the soils. What we like to watch is in that second season when we go out and pull samples again, 9 times out of 10, I'll go back to that, the rate that Kelsene goes down is cut by 50%. So now you're down to a half a gallon or a couple quarts, whatever it might be. So that is something that farmers love to hear because they think you're going to go out and you got to put this on 1 gallon per acre every year. No, you don't.
And you guys monitor that
We monitor
pretty
that
closely
all
for
the time. Yep.
growers, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
I would say, I wanted to say thank you. We want to thank the farmers for their portion of joining forces with us, so to speak, in watching Kelsene. When we go out to meet a brand new producer, they'll say, well, I've heard about it, I've seen it, and that's happening now. It didn't happen the first year because everybody says, who are you and what is this? But now it's coming back. I've heard about Kelsene because I watch Ag Week TV, and I've talked to my farmer friends that have trialed it, or my cousin who lives 150 miles away. What comes back into the conversation is we talk to them about, it's a 5 to maybe 10 acre trial. We want you to see this work. This isn't about spending money, it's about investing some money to see what you can get to come back again. And when we talk about the soils, one of the things that we do with the producers too is they say, my ground is getting worse and worse every year. And we've seen that. We're watching this ground continue to increase in the salt levels. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we like to do is to visit with producers about going back and maybe looking at a 20 acre trial that they pulled soils out 20 years ago, I should say 20 years ago. Where the ground, they can kind of get an idea of what the ground was like 20 years ago, and now it's gotten worse. And then we kind of go into them talking about what are you how are you farming? What are you using for different levels of doing what you're doing? If it's tillage, if it's certain fertilizers that are full of salt and adding to the issues out there, we go into that discussion with them and give them recommendations on that. What we don't like to do necessarily is tell farmers what to do when we do recommendations. We'll give them 2 or 3 options to go by. Whatever they choose, we follow up. And it's fun to hear them come back and say, it's about time nobody's telling me what to do. And we're not there to do that. We're there to help them and support them. Show them what they can be doing and then partner with them. That's why we kind of call ECO as a family business with even the producers themselves.
All right. Is that it? Did you cover all the ground,
I
so to
think
speak?
so.
Little farm joke there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny. Some farmers are real gung-ho to try something new, and some are skeptical, and I
Yep.
guess you just have to
Yeah.
figure out what you're
Yep.
working with, right?
Yep. And it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
We love skepticism because when we tell a lot of farmers that this isn't something that takes place and it's gone, it's done over one night. When we tell them that it takes a 3 to 5 year reclamation process, they go, "Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that because now you're not telling me that this is something that's going to just quickly take place." So.
No miracle thing.
Yeah,
Snake
exactly.
oil.
It's yep.
All right.
Snake oil. It's been called snake oil, and I've looked on the website for snake. I can't find any. So, but if I could, we would maybe label it up and see what we could do.
Try it.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it? Did we get it all?
We
can
want to
make
say thank you to Ag Week TV. You folks have given us through ECO and all of the dealers that work with us in the Upper Midwest the privilege of going public. And it's speeded things up because farmers have called us from all over the tri-state region where you guys cover the ground, and they'll say, "I saw your thing, I'm from way out in western South Dakota. Do you guys ever come out here?" And the answer is yes, we do. And we always write down where we got started and whether it was a referral, whether it was through the marketing that we've been having the opportunities to go out and spread the good news through Ag Week. It's been fun.
Good. Well, anytime you can improve soil, right? Like
Yeah. Improve soils, bring soil back that farmers are not able to, that they've walked away from, so to speak, and now they see it coming back to life again. And on the fertilizer side of coming out is sharing with farmers how they can save money and get the same results, if not better.
And not have to worry about, can I even get it this year?
Exactly. Yep.
You got plenty of
We do
supply.
have a large supply of products, and we have more and more coming in. I will put it this way, when a pallet comes in with 180 gallons on it, okay, we're covering 5,500 acres with that one pallet. So farmers can go ahead and do the math on what truckloads cost and what truckloads also are going to cover.
Great.
We can haul a pallet in the back end of our pickup.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Good.